Assassin's Creed Valhalla offers a lot of answers for old-time fans and connects a lot of stories to the games that came before. Yet it does so in a manner that is satisfying to old-timers but not confusing to the new players that only got into the world of Assassin's Creed recently. Which leads us to the topic of this video and how exactly the entire Jotunheim arc and the Hidden Truth play into the already established lore. I have already made a video on the Hidden Truth and why exactly it is so important to the narrative, so be sure to check it out after you're done watching this video. And without any further delay, let's take a brief look at the history of the ISU and how exactly it fits in the narrative arc of Jotunheim and the Hidden Truth. It goes without saying, but this video will contain spoilers regarding some major arcs in Valhalla. So if you haven't yet finished the Jotunheim arc or have yet to finish the overall narrative of AC Valhalla, then be sure to finish that first and then come back to this video. I suppose the perfect way to start off this video would be to lift the Norse veil on some of the already revealed ISU that were a part of the previous games. Pretty much every god or godlike being that you meet in Jotunheim is a Norse disguise of an ISU that you have already met. Suttungr is an ISU that you've already met who also goes by the name of Jupiter. Gunnlodr, or Suttungr's daughter, is Minerva, whereas Hirokin is Juno and Angrboda is none other than Aletheia herself. Now aside from Aletheia, who we meet in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the other three ISU were part of a small team of scientists that were finding a way to stop Ragnarok. In other words, the solar flare that almost wiped out the ISU. We will get back on the Capitoline Triad and the 7 attempts to escape their impending doom later on, but for now, let's just focus on the solar flare and how it almost wiped the ISU out. The Turba Catastrophe, the first catastrophe, Ragnarok, or the solar flare that almost wiped the ISU and the humans alike wasn't something that sprang out of nowhere. In fact, most of the ISU knew of this rising threat, but amidst the war between ISU and the humans and the ISU's own arrogant nature, most failed to realize it until it was too late to work on a viable solution. In fact, the ISU tried 6 methods to protect their kind from the impending doom, and 6 times they failed due to various time and budget constraints, which are explained more in depth in Assassin's Creed 3. The ISU tried everything from building pillars to attract and divert the solar flare, to figuring out time travel and going back in time. Yet none of them worked. One of the methods even involved transferring consciousness to an inanimate object. The ISU even had a willing subject to test this theory out. Aita, Juno's husband, was the first and only volunteer since the project proved too fatal for the mind to handle, which caused Juno to euthanize her own husband, and thus the project was abandoned. All the 6 methods can actually be viewed in Suttungr's vault with a vague description explaining each of the methods tested. Even Juno's husband is briefly mentioned in Valhalla, so if you want to know more about his role in Valhalla, I'll leave a link in the description below. Now that we've talked about the Turba Catastrophe and the 6 failed methods to prevent it, let us talk about the Capitoline Triad and how they played a role in Assassin's Creed up until Valhalla. Juno, Minerva, and Jupiter have constantly appeared during the Desmond saga that includes the first 4 games and Assassin's Creed 3. When Minerva could not come up with a viable outcome to prevent the catastrophe, and after the Capitoline Triad broke up to continue research by their own, she looked towards the future and recorded messages in packets that would be visible to Desmond's ancestors, hoping to ultimately guide him to the Grand Temple and prevent the catastrophe from happening again, which led to Desmond sacrificing himself in the Grand Temple in the year 2012 to basically stop the human race from hitting a reset button again. Yet in preventing that from happening, Desmond also freed Juno from her captivity, which we will talk about in just a second. Let's circle back to Desmond's sacrifice and how it only delayed the inevitable doom. As we learn in the modern day ending of Valhalla, what Desmond basically sacrificed himself for was to give humanity another 8 years to work out a solution to save themselves, and wait for Eve to join Adam in the calculations and give birth to a new world. Now it's heavily implied that Layla joining Desmond in Yggdrasil and aiding him in calculating a safe outcome in which the catastrophe doesn't pop up again and again is basically a subtle nod to Desmond being Adam and Layla being Eve. Thus, that calculations leading to the birth of a safe world for humans without any threat of an impending doom looming over their heads. I strongly suspect that this is the 8th and final method of salvation that will finally stop the solar flare threat for good, and with that, only the Forbidden 7 method remains. The method which is the root of the entire narrative in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and the method for which Juno was imprisoned in the Grand Temple for eternity. The Mead, the method through which ISU could be born again in a human's body, was forbidden due to its unforeseen and grave consequences. These consequences are never mentioned in detail, but they could refer to a variety of issues and threats that could take hold due to its application. The ability of a human mind to overcome an ISU mind and remain in control, the polluting of the human DNA with the ISU DNA, or in some extreme cases, entire loss of identity and eventual madness of both the human and the ISU brain. But perhaps the biggest threat was that if the ISU were to merge themselves with humans and gain control of their bodies, what was to stop them from becoming arrogant again and repeating the mistakes that led to their doom in the first place? A mixture of these issues led to Minerva and Jupiter forbidding its use and locking it away from Juno's hands, who wanted to use it despite its grave consequences if it meant that she and Aita could be together again and hold dominion over humans and the world. That is, until Odin came along looking for a way to save the Aesir. The entire Jotunheim arc serves as his introduction of the seventh method and how it relates to ISU being born again in human bodies. In its purest form, the meat could only be used for the ISU to be reborn once in a human body, which contradicts to what I've believed previously, that Odin and the other Aesir were reborn countless times before Eivor's saga. The only ISU that can reincarnate multiple times is Aita, and that's because Juno, being a lead scientist herself, altered the meat so that Aita could reincarnate multiple times and find a way for them to be together. This section is also referenced in Valhalla when both Juno and Odin meet at the Well of Mimir.
Efforts, you have returned to me what is mine. The ashes of my husband. He made his own sacrifice for knowledge. With a few changes to this mead, I may undo old sorrows.
Of course, this did not fly over so well with Minerva and Jupiter, which led to them locking Juno up in Grand Temple, only escaping when Desmond sacrificed himself for humanity's survival. And with that, I think I've gone over everything that the Jotunheim arc showcases without much explanation. Everything from the 7 methods of escaping the Turba Catastrophe, the members of the Capitoline Triad, their role in shaping previous Assassin's Creed games, and the narrative of Assassin's Creed Valhalla itself. One of the main reasons I wanted to make this video was to bridge the gap between old and new Assassin's Creed fans, since I think there is already a huge gap there, and also because I'm a nerd who likes to know these little details about the long and complex lore of Assassin's Creed. However, I'm by no means an expert when it comes to AC's lore, so I apologize if I've messed up some details, so feel free to point anything out in the comments below that I may have looked over or missed. But if you enjoyed the video, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe to keep up with my full review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla that should drop in a few days' time if everything goes accordingly. But that does it for me, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.